The 2021 Endurance E-Racing World Championship Round 2, Filmvolt 12 Hours of Silverstone, is brought to you in partnership with ESTV, Leak Gaming, SimLab, Motorvision.tv, Global Flix, Racing for Green, and AMD Ryzen Radeon.
Welcome back to continuing coverage. We've now passed the halfway mark of the Filmvolt 12 Hours of Silverstone here on GTR 24H. Alex Goldschmidt now joined by Ewan O'Leary in the commentary box.
Steward's decision is already
just to be completely honest here, Ewan, halfway through the race, there is still quite a lot still to go, and I don't think the race has peaked quite yet, has it?
Well, no, I find that it's always the way that these races, they get more exciting as they go along, and so we're getting towards that climax now, or we're closer to the end than we are to the start, I guess, with us crossing over the halfway mark in and around about now. So yeah, I think the main action is still to come, but we're having a lot of action right now as well. Second place in GT3 is a battle that's kind of going on at the moment. Mugen versus Danish Racing League. Matthias Blom is just falling away a little bit at the moment, but he is still there or thereabouts. And interestingly, in that class, Alexander Zakharov, while we've been watching those battles so much for P2, we've seen that Alexander Zakharov has really walked away from everybody else. He's now a minute in front, and that's a really big lead to be having at this point.
Yeah, a warm welcome once again back to all our viewers on the YouTube channel for GTR 24H. Also, Facebook Live, our friends over at Amazon Fire, RockU, and also Esports TV. And at the top of the hour, after now completing halfway out of this race, the current leaders are overall in the hypercar classes. The round one victors from Indianapolis. Pinsim Drillers Esports with Henry Sinnick back behind the wheel, completing 195 laps thus far, ahead of Patrick Silvasi from Omicron Sim Racing, the number 80. Daniel Vizner leads still after 191 laps completed by the leading LMP2 class car in 117, ahead of Andonovsky from Drillers Esports in 17, and Christopher Klanek in number 22. From Mugen Sim Racing. GTE, it is still the number 54 of Fabio Liuzzi from Musto GD Esports that leads after 173 laps completed, whilst Eros Masciuli from the Pescara ADG number 7 Corvette C8R is in pit lane, and that will give the Musto GD Esports 1-2 a quick revival as the 53 of Giuseppe De Forco continues to pilot the sister BMW M8 GTE. GT3, as Ewan was just alluding to, Alexander Zakharov is well over a minute ahead of Donat Diesner in the number 41, so that's Unison Racing in the 717, Mugen Sim Racing in the 41, with Matthias Blom in the number 13, Danish Racing League. Ferrari 488 is about 1.7 seconds behind Diesner. So Ewan, obviously that foreboding rain, I think, is waiting to hit the circuit, and it looks like Race Control has just basically said that there was no respect given by the number 67 Volante GTE Aston Martin, having been overtaken by the overall leader Henry Sinnick in the number 10 Senna GTR, and it looks like Patrick Silvasi has now pulled into the pit lane.
That's the second penalty in very quick succession actually for the 67, so not a particularly good stint at the moment for Paul August Land. So yeah, that's really bad news at this point to get two penalties in a matter of 10 minutes, I'm afraid. Busy portion of the track going on in turn 4 at the moment. Mugen Sim Racing involved in this battle for GT3 that is continuing on. A lot of traffic. One Move Esports, the number 26, has just lapped themselves from this position. It's a shame to see that they're not actually in this fight legitimately, because at one point in the race I thought they would be, but unfortunately they've lost a lap, and they're actually nearly 3 minutes down, I guess, in time on the leader, Alexander Zakharov. We've still got that battle for second going on, and interestingly, One Move are battling with Glam Racing themselves as well. That gap is not too big either, so GT3 full of action at the moment, but they're all going to be looking up towards the skies in the next few moments because the rain really is starting to loom large in the thoughts of everybody, I think, and it's probably going to rain in the dark as well, which is possibly the worst thing to experience as an actual driver. I saw it when I was monitoring the forecast a little bit earlier on, the rain just kept getting pushed back and back and back. I thought at one point it was just never going to come, it was just going to keep getting pushed back, but recently in the last few hours the time slot for 7 o'clock rain has stayed very, very similar for the last 3 hours or so, and it's actually been moved forward to 6 o'clock local time, which is in just under an hour's time. So anything from that onwards, I think we're really in trouble if you don't like the wet weather conditions.
Very much the case, and I've just seen that Patrick Silvassi has now handed over to Josef Frederick Suto in the number 80 Omicron Sim Racing car. Luca Gray has also exited the pits, and I did see the number 63 Viaductum car, the bright orange, fluorescent orange, and I think that thing's glow in the dark. Right, there's been another driver coming to the pits, that is Donat Diesner from what is second position. That's going to give Matthias Blom the opportunity to now capitalise and get back up into second place. So it will be a case that Matthias Blom will now have to push like crazy. Donat Diesner has now dropped down into third position as Jordi San Andres in the number 51 WOSR iZone Performance Porsche 911 GTE splits the pair of them at this particular moment in time. And you said about the weather, I think there are more cars coming in. I think I've just seen another McLaren just head into the pit lane. But you say about the weather here at Silverstone, I think I mentioned this a couple of times during this broadcast already, Ewan, but also in the preview show last night. When it rains, it is like an ice rink here at Silverstone, isn't it?
Yeah, for some reason, it does seem to be particularly treacherous. I can't really put my finger on quite why, but it's certainly very, very difficult. I find that when you in the wet weather conditions anyway, prototypes tend to struggle because they haven't got that much mechanical grip. A lot of aero on those cars, which makes them fantastic in high-speed corners like Maggots and Beckett's, and it's fantastic actually to drive around Silverstone. You really would like a prototype, but in the wet weather conditions, it's not quite so nice. You need that mechanical grip, and that's why we've seen in the past, not quite here at Silverstone, but races like Petit Le Mans, the GT cars actually winning really, really wet races because they're just so much better on mechanical grip. They can actually be faster than the prototypes in some situations. I can't see that quite happening here at a wide open circuit like Silverstone, but it has happened in the past, and if that rain does indeed come, then the GT cars I think are going to be a lot more comfortable with it than the prototypes are going to be.
Yeah, and it's always about having problems with regards to it. And I've just had obviously we do get messages.
Sorry, big spin from One Move Esports trying to go down the inside of Glam Racing, and they've both gone for a massive spin at turn one, and they're both across the racetrack at the moment. One Move are going to be able to get going quicker and get going again in actually take the position because of that, but goodness me, that was a massive and they're both very lucky to keep that out the wall as well. That was a huge moment.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to I've just seen those three dreaded letters behind by the side of the 995 car of Deke Hackers. I remember you saying that their rear wing decided to come off, didn't it, at some point, whether it was through contact or through a moment that the number 95 LMP2 car had. As Matt Webb from E-Team Brit now pits, he's now coming down pit lane at the moment. So a good solid run from the Dunsfold-based crew, headed up by team manager Max Spooner. So Matt Webb comes into the pits. But yeah, Lucas is definitely, well, according to part of the timing that I'm seeing on my screen, he's showing as a DNF, but that's a massive moment going into Abbey. Those drivers really now, that's halfway through the race, and any mistake now, you can really, if you're gunning for a podium or you're gunning for a victory, you can pretty much forget it, can't you, unless the rain equalises things.
Yeah, even then, I think you can pretty much forget it with the competitiveness of these classes. It's going to be very hard to recover from those kind of moments. I believe that might be a retirement, unfortunately, for Diak Hackers. It is the second time they've lost their rear wing in this race. Earlier on, they were running up inside the top 5, having a great race, but unfortunately, a bit of an incident for Roland Zux at the end of his stint, about 3 hours into the race, meant that they dropped back a long way, repairing that front wing and getting a new rear kind of assembly onto that car. I don't know what the suspension kind of damage was as well. That could have been a factor in their long pit stop, but I'm afraid they're about to have a longer stop in the pit lane, because this could be a 6-hour stop to the end of the race. This might be the end of the road for those guys, and they will become the second car to retire from this race. We have already had a retirement from the number 27 Simulator Esports car. Alvaro and Chelsea was driving at the time, and they haven't completed any laps for a good 90 minutes, I want to say, maybe even more than that, I'm afraid. Yeah, they're out, and I think that Diak Hackers might be joining them as well.
Yeah, that was the number 27 GT3 car. Only had completed 114 laps, and Diak Hackers have completed 190 laps, whereas Henry Sinek in the number 10 Pinsim Jewelers Esports car out and now. It looks like there is a car coming out of the pits. Is that if that is the number 95, I'm just wondering how did they actually signal to race control that they were coming back onto the server? If there has been an issue, I mean, they have now shown back up. If they haven't done it correctly, that's a 3-lap penalty for that car.
Yeah, there could well be a 3-lap penalty coming their way if they've forgotten to do it in the heat of battle, as you might be able to expect, really. A 3-lap penalty would demote them right outside of the points at this point. They are in I think they're actually in 11th place already, or are they in 10th? It's very close. I think they might be in 11th position anyway, but a 3-lap penalty will pretty much destroy their chances of actually getting any kind of points from their position. They're still going to get 1 at least for completing the race, but it's a bit of a consolation at that point, really. If you're not getting inside the top 10, then it's likely that you haven't had the greatest of races, and 1 point isn't going to be too much to actually console yourself with at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Ewan. I think it's just that would put them actually well outside, because they are 11th in LMP2 ahead of Mika Hakimi from Abstenea Force Bologna, and then the 766 with Kim Pedersen behind the wheel. That would, if that's a 3-lap penalty, that will give them an opportunity. That will not help them whatsoever, as I've just spotted that Matthias Blom is now in the pits, I believe, in the number 13 Danish Racing League car. The car's now off its air jacks, and very shortly will be coming out of the pits, and that is the case. Yeah, the number 13 looks like one of the Volante cars. That's the number 66 in from what is effectively looks to be that 6th position in GTE. And there is one of the other cars now coming into the pits. That is Patrick Lucas, that is now coming to the pits after coming out of the garage. So, I'm just keeping an eye on whether there is, and that was a very quick stop there. And you can see, I could see that, and now Roland Zux has now got back behind the wheel of that car. So there's been a driver change. So I think, so Lukasz has turned to asking Roland Zux to step in and get that opportunity of getting back behind the wheel. Roland Zux actually took the start here for the number 95 of Diak Hackers, as the number 777 of DSR Nightmare now enters the pit lane. And quite a few other cars. The 67, that's got Paul Lange just behind, Paul Auguslan just behind the wheel a bit. Still 5 3/4 hours still to go here, Ewan. I just really can't imagine what's going to happen a bit further down the order, because there are still some monstrous battles, I think, still to be waged in the next hour or so, and as soon as that rain hits, that's going to turn everything around. And I've just seen from race control that Vargas Sim Racing did not give the true respect of racing room in comparison with the Teleforingen number 188 GT3 car on that particular occasion. So Vargas Sim Racing also being kept under the watchful eye of race control.
Yeah, they are. They're leading by a lap and about 30 seconds at the moment to Drillers Esports, who are in second. But that kind of drive-through penalty or whatever penalty they have received is probably going to wipe out the advantage that they have, or well, some of the advantages that they have. I think they'll be about a lap in the lead, but that'll be about it. So their lead is going to be slashed out so slightly, but they're still comfortably in the lead of LMP2. In GTE at the moment, speaking about Volante a moment ago, but they're actually in a little bit of a battle. They were closing down massively on Pescara. They're not actually that far away from a pit stop, actually, Volante. The Aston Martin is not quite going as long on its stints as the Corvette and the BMW are, and we're getting towards that point where they're actually making the pit stop at the same point, and so they might end up a good pit stop behind Pescara and Musto, which would be terrible news for them. I'm just going to check when I think their next pit stop is due. They're doing about 30 lap stints, and we're coming up to lap 180, so that works out quite nicely. They've got to be in very shortly. The number 66 has already been in. The 67 is probably going to be in very, very soon, so expect to see that car coming down pit lane in the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, so the LMP2 cars, Mika Hakimi from Abstiner Force Bologna is in pit lane. So a lot of drive. So that's really effectively what's going to be a change of position for the 999. So and in many respects here, to still have 32 cars running after over 6.25 hours here at Silverstone for the Film Vault 12 hours, Ewan. That's just shown. Oh, and I've just seen that the number 777 of that's a nightmare for DSR Nightmare, if I must be completely honest. It's showing that they're a DNF, and that is in the LMP2 rankings. That is 8th position. So I think really the number 95. Yeah, that has happened. There was a 3-lap penalty, I think, was applied to Roland Zux in that car. So the Deke Hackers now drops to about 14.5 seconds behind the number 766 of DSR Dream Team, and now the number 17, the current second place car in LMP2 of Pinsim Drillers Esports at Andonovsky, has now come in after 197 laps, so another pit stop phase now starting to present itself here in LMP2.
Yeah, it is. Mugen Sim Racing have already been in as well. Zoltan Boda is into that car now for the number 22, and he'll be coming out around about where Andonovsky is, a little bit, well, if it is Andonovsky indeed who takes that car out again, but he might not get in front, but maybe even a little bit closer for Mugen there. The gap's kind of fluctuating between those guys and Fair Racing Team, who they're really having a fight with for that second place in LMP2. Max Scholten is the man who holds second place at the moment, but I believe there could be a pit stop due for them soon. Although, he's just dropped behind Andonovsky there. Zoltan is... Scholten is in the pit lane at the moment, actually, that's why. I missed that slightly. As Boda should get out in front of Max Scholten, and he does indeed. That all sorts itself out nicely, as we were expecting, and as it has been for the last few laps, really. But it's a real shame, I think, for DSR Nightmare to have DNF from the race. I hope they do get back. I really hope they do, because they've not been having the greatest luck this season in LMP2. Moved up from GT3 last year into LMP2 this year, and struggled really in Indianapolis. Didn't have the race that they were really hoping for. They got 8th place in the end, and they were battling over 7th with ProSim here today, around about where they should be, but having a really good run, and I'm afraid this DNF has just halted that ever so slightly, and that is a real shame.
Yeah, I've just noticed that Max Scholten from Fair Racing Team still in the pits at this particular moment in time, and Rui Reis from the Ramada Motorsport crew in the 57 was also in the pits, I believe. I think I even saw a glimpse of Daniel Vishna coming into the pit lane as well from Vargas Sim Racing. That could have been to serve that drive-through for that no respect overtake on the 188 of Nielsen in the Teleforing and GT3 car. So you can just sort of see, and now we are getting towards the halfway point of this hour. Ewan, let's just talk about this weather. You know, it's still rather cloudy here at Silverstone. The sunshine's starting to break through the clouds. It's about 13 degrees Celsius. There's a northeasterly wind of around just over 4 meters per second. But then in a couple of hours or so, that could all change because the wind could pick up again. It could double, according to predicted weather reports, in the next 3 hours, where it could hit as much as 8 meters per second from the northeast. We had at one point the possibility that there could be a 150% chance of rain. That's now dropped by 7% for 3 hours' time. We know about Silverstone having that opportunity of really, really providing a different dynamic. We could see that this afternoon because at Indianapolis, we had the reverse, didn't we? We had a very, very slight, we had a damp qualifying session 2 in the nightfall as the Teleforingen car now actually pits from what is 31st overall. We could see a very different dynamic in the last few moments of this race, and some drivers will look forward to it. Those other drivers that are absolutely rocketing around this circuit, like Henry Sinnock in the overall lead, could find that the favour could come their way, and they could have a bit of lady luck shining on them despite having no sunshine overhead at the minute.
Yeah, whatever sunshine that was at the circuit at any point here this afternoon is disappearing now, really. We are getting towards nightfall here at Silverstone. I'm surprised, if I'm honest, that the sun has, or the light has stayed with us for this long. I don't quite know what time of year the game is set into at the moment. I know the time of day is what it is in Europe, so it's midday to midnight in the game in terms of time, but obviously the time of year is going to affect things a little bit with regards to the sun setting, because obviously it already has here in real life in the UK, but not quite in the sim just for the moment. But nightfall is not too far from us, and neither do we think the rain is, which is interesting to say the least. We'll find out, of course, in the next few moments, but it's certainly seeming more and more likely that we are going to have a wet finish to this race, which is arguably even more difficult than a wet start to the race, because you're so tired by the time you get to these final few hours. You don't really want to be driving in the dark and in the rain at the same time when you're already really tired and pretty battered after what is going to be about 7 hours of racing or 8 hours of racing by the time we actually do get that rainfall.
Well, I've just been informed, a big thank you to Nick Newcomb for keeping in touch. He's just informed me that the 777, the DSR Nightmare, now look at that, they've gone to stone dead last. They had a game crash and then had to rejoin the server, so now they've now inherited that last position out of 13. More cars in the pits. Looks like Paul Lane back in the pits again in the 67 Volante car. Marcus Berggren in the 177 ID SimSport car is showing in the pits, and then also looks like I've got the Teleforingen car still in there. It's still parked in the pits. And obviously here, Ewan, we've talked a lot about this. We talk a lot about this in endurance racing, about the strategy that these teams are coming through. And if I'm honest with you, I haven't seen Teleforingen actually move that much in the last minute or so.
No, it's a little bit concerning. Although I haven't been seeing them too much at all, actually, in this race at all. Yeah, it's a little bit concerning at the moment for those guys, but I think they'll be okay in the end. They're kind of in a battle between themselves and DISSR Lab. They're not really competing for anything more than that at this point, but still sat there in the pit box doing not a lot really. I'm sure there is something going on down there, because this is not a normal pit stop at this stage. In LMP2, by the way, keeping with the theme of cars further down the order, Roland Zooks is trying to make his way back up the order again after a pretty poor race for Diak Hackers, excuse me. Yeah, they're on the back of Kim Pedersen now, who's been running there in the 766 for pretty much the entire race, but about to be overtaken, I'm afraid, by the 95, I would imagine. Given the way that Zooks has caught up to the 766, I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to pass just as easily.
Yeah, really, really close between them at the moment, and it's less than a second at the moment. Roland Zooks actually took nearly 2 seconds out of Kim Pedersen on that particular moment in time, and another slap on the wrist for Glam Racing, the 404, and whilst the number 26 of One Move Esports tried to get past again, it was a lack of respect shown, probably not enough room, because obviously if you're the faster car, you're the one that's going to make the overtake safely, but if you're the car that's being lapped, you also need to show due deference and also have enough racing respect in terms of room being allocated to that other driver. And we've seen quite a few of that over the course of the race so far, but nothing to the point where there have been multiple infractions from one particular team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised by that. I would have to see that incident again, I think, to really know what I actually think about that particular incident, because, it was a bit 50-50 for me, really, to see whether that penalty is deserved for Glam Racing or not. But it doesn't really matter. They've got to get on with it now and just move on with the race and put that behind them, really. Despite the fact they've got a penalty, they did lose a fair bit of time, actually, 10-20 seconds to One Move in that little incident, but that doesn't mean you're going to be penalised, or that doesn't mean you're not going to be penalised for it, because you're still halting the car that you had the incident with, of course. So, I have to say I'm a little bit surprised by that particular ruling, but obviously they've got to get on with it, and so have we. It was a 50-50 incident down to turn one, but Glam Racing have ended up with a penalty, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's always the way these things do happen. That is part and parcel of racing here in the EEWC. And the good thing is that there's still plenty of that race still to go, as we are now approaching the half hour part of hour number 7 of the Film Vault 12 Hours of Silverstone here on GTR 24H. You can follow all the live timing on timing.gtr24h.org. You can also, if you are listening in your cars, there's also, if you head to the website on your browser, gtr24h.org, you can also click on the radio podcast that we've got live, that is actually being streamed at the very same time. We're streaming in both sound and vision here across the globe. Also, once again, a big thank you to our new viewers on Amazon Fire, Roku, and then also on eSports TV. That's it for the first half hour. Myself and Ewan will be back in just a couple of moments' time after a brief commercial break from our sponsors.
The 2021 Endurance E-Racing World Championship Round 2, Film Vault 12 Hours of Silverstone, is brought to you in partnership with ESTV, Leak Gaming, SimLab, Motorvision.tv, Global Flix, Racing for Green, and AMD Ryzen Radeon.
Racing for Green is here to help you carbon neutralize your racing. By planting new trees, Racing for Green offers to make your racing carbon neutral. We already have the calculations, contacts, infrastructure, deals and solutions ready for you to easily buy carbon neutral laps on any racetrack. It doesn't matter if you are a racing fan, team owner, driver, sponsor or partner. Anyone can buy CO2 neutral laps in the Racing for Green webshop and trade CO2 emissions for New Forest. Racing for Green.
swap over to PC6 then. In that case, if I'm able to.
I mean, I'm on PC.
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll just keep going. That's all we can do. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second half of Hour 7 of the 2021 Film Vault 12 Hours of Silverstone, brought to you by GTR24H.org. Alex Goldschmidt and Ewan O'Leary back once again for the second half of this hour. And at the moment, Henry Sinnock still leading in the hypercar class for Pinsim Drillers Esports. Daniel Visner still leading in LMP2 in the 117 Varga Sim Racing car. And then down GTE, it is the Musto 54 BMW M8 of Fabio Liuzzi leading the way ahead of Giuseppe De Fuocos. There's still a Musto dust-up, but they are still about 21.5 seconds away from each other respectively in terms of proximity. And then Alexei Maizin in the number 717 Unison Racing Aston Martin is currently leading the GT3 class ahead of Martin Milotai in the number 41 Mugen Sim Racing car. And still, Ewan, we've got just over 25 minutes of this 7th hour of the race still to go. It's still rather interesting. And now Daniel Visner now pits from the LMP2 class lead from Vargas Sim Racing, having completed a total of 207 laps thus far.
Well, is this the pit stop or is it a penalty? Because we know he's got one, so I haven't seen him serve it, so he might be just not even stopping in his box. Oh, he is stopping in his box, so this is an actual pit stop this time. He's going again now, unless it was a short stop go, because that was not a very long time to be in the pit lane. He's exiting again now, so I wonder if that was the penalty actually. From what I could see, I didn't actually look at the penalty itself, but it looked penalty-like to me. In duty-free at the moment, we've had a few pit stops as well, and a few driver changes as well. All three of the main players we think could be winning this race have all changed their drivers, which is quite rare, but that's what's happened. Alexei Maizin has got in the Unison Racing at 717 GT3 leading car. Martin Milotai has got into the Mugen car, and then in the third place it's Morten Agsen in the Danish Racing League car. The Unison Racing just over a minute in front now, and they're really starting to stretch this out. All driver changes and all changing in GT3 with Morten Agsen for Danish Racing League. I have to say, not quite as quick as the Mugen Sim Racing car as it stands right now.
Yeah, and also just had some confirmation from Race Control. Both the 777 of DSR Nightmare and the number 95 of Deke Hackers got a 3-lap penalty. The reason why there was a lost connection for the 777 of DSR Nightmare, so they've rejoined the server. However, it's a little bit more strict on the 95 of Deke Hackers. You know that we've been talking about this. We've all been talking about this car. It's had a lost rear wing. It's had an issue. They had a rejoin for the car number 95. However, because they did not tell Race Control, they also get another big slap on the wrist, or is it a slap round the face, with a 60-second stop-go penalty. The Deke Hackers, that car's race is going from bad to worse, and I'm sure the team will be licking their wounds at the end of this race here, Ewan.
Yeah, it's not been the greatest race for them, it has to be said, but there's not a lot they can do about it at this point. I just wonder if that's the penalty that's given to everyone. I'm not entirely sure if they give 3 laps and 60 seconds to everyone, or if they just gave special treatment to Deke Hackers because they've been having a bad enough race already. You might as well make it worse. So no, I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure that is the same for everybody, because that's just kind of the way it is normally in these ones. That rule's been in place for quite a long time. I think it was due to back in the day. Well, I'll say back in the day. It was only a few years ago, I'd imagine, unless someone wants to make me feel a little bit older than I am. there was a problem when you driver swapped or when you got damaged, you'd lose top speed. But if you did a driver swap and kind of left the race and came back again, you'd get a new car and you'd go a lot faster. So that 3-lap penalty was brought in to kind of combat that kind of little issue. That issue's been fixed now, but we still have the rule in place because if you do ruin your car and you get a new one, it's not the most realistic thing. So we'll have to see about it really. But it's certainly affected Jack Hackers today.
Yeah, very much the case. And just going on board at the moment with the number 13 from Danish Racing League, the Ferrari 488 GT3, and that has got Martin Egerson behind the wheel. And the Dane is actually not that far behind Martin Milotay in there as well. So in many respects, that is just one of those things where these drivers now have to really keep on pushing. They've got a McLaren just up ahead, I believe, and they've got the Teleforingen car just up in front as well. And that looks to be the 46 DISSR Lab McLaren 720 in the GT3. So yeah, in many respects that could be the case that Egerson could actually use these cars, this backmarker traffic, to really give him the opportunity to get a move on and actually get some extra momentum through this as well, Ewan, because the slipstream is very ultra important here, going down the Wellington and the Hammer Straight here at Silverstone.
Yeah, it can be important, but I just don't think Anderson's got the pace at this point in the race. It's the first time we've seen him driving this car here today, I do believe. It's been Sebastian Hove and Matthias Blom for pretty much the entire race. This all-Danish team been rotating around, and now Anderson has got into that car, and so he's just not quite as quick as Milotay in front. He lost 5 tenths on the last particular lap. But they both gained on Alexei Maizin, the leader in Unison Racing, so maybe that gap was going to close down again. It's just toing and froing at the moment though in GT3, not quite as close as it once was. Unison Racing have been stretching their legs in the last few hours, it has to be said, but I don't think they've quite got an unassailable lead just yet.
Yeah, I think there's still plenty of time still to go, Ewan, because we've got just under 20 minutes of this hour remaining. We're into hour 7 out of 12 for the Film Vault 12 hours of Silverstone. A big thank you to everyone for tuning in for what has been a rather interesting opportunity for a lot of these drivers, a lot of them looking for points, a lot of them for looking to build that momentum into the third round of the season at Sebring. And yeah, I think in some respects we could be getting an idea of what the weather is doing right about now here, Ewan.
Yeah, it looks like it. We're going to bring something up here to kind of give you a visual representation instead of us just describing it to you all the time. Give you a visual representation as to what's really happening in Silverstone first of all, but around it as well. Well, I'm no expert, but that green bit doesn't look good. So I think that's going to it may well trouble us in the next half an hour or so. It certainly doesn't look appetising for those who don't like rain, and then in a few hours time, as you can see or just saw, completely engulfed in rain, so that's not very promising for these guys, and obviously it's getting more accurate as we get closer to that point. When we were doing practice, I was talking to Neil on practice, on the very early points of practice on Thursday. The forecast at that point was pretty much a weekend washout, really. We haven't quite had that, but as we get closer to the point where rain's actually going to fall, it's getting more accurate, and as I mentioned earlier on, the point of which where rain was going to come was just getting pushed back and back all weekend, but now it's stopped, it's settled on a particular moment, and in the next hour, 2 hours, we're definitely going to see some rain, judging by that, but forecasts have been known to be wrong before, and they may well be again.
Yeah, you're completely right. It looks like on the YouTube chat at the moment, Nick Newcomb's getting more blame thrown his way at the minute, bless him. But yeah, that looks rather foreboding. It seems like the bringer of doom, which just so happens to be the weather, is what's going to really change things right now, because I've got absolutely no doubt at all that the rain will come, but it's not a case of if, it's always a case of when. And when we get to within that sort of like 10-minute mark of that rain due to hit here, Ewan, it can really then change the dynamics. It also changes in respect of how much rain does actually fall on the circuit. And I'm not a betting man, but I would imagine that if it comes down really heavily, there's going to be an absolute influx into pit lane for what could be really a major decisive factor in the race, but also in terms of the championship permutations leaving here at Silverstone and heading to Sebring in just a month's time.
Well, there will be an influx of drivers into the pit lane if the rainfall is very suddenly very hard. If it's not like that, like it sometimes is, well, everywhere really, when it just starts to sprinkle and drizzle a bit before it's psychological rain where you can see it, it's not actually affecting you very much, but you're always worrying about it because it's kind of there on your windscreen and you think that it is going to affect you, but it doesn't. So you drive slower than you meant to, but it's not actually affecting you at all. If it rains really hard very quickly, then it's going to be a very easy decision, but it doesn't often work like that, especially in the UK. At circuits like Sepang, for example, where in those kind of monsoon climates, it just suddenly drops about 3 buckets of rain on your head very, very easily. The pit lap is very, very clear, really, and you know straight away, but oftentimes it's not like that. It never quite works out right, and so we could see that today, and getting that crossover point absolutely bang on is very, very important. If you don't, then you're going to lose a lot of time.
I'm wondering if a lot of people might want to have Jenson Button, 2009 Formula One world champion, in their corner. Obviously, that real good race back in 2011 at Canada, where Sebastian Vettel literally tripped up on the final lap of the race, and Button, after what was it, a 4-hour plus race, he came into contact with his then teammate Lewis Hamilton, and still managed to win the race, having 5 pit stops, a nose wing, a nose change, and everything else, and he just rose to the challenge. And he showed that when he joined McLaren and actually won his race on debut, when everyone else decided, yeah, we're going to stay out for a bit longer. Jenson Button decided, when the rain had actually stopped and there was a dry definitive line, the leader, Henry Sinnock, getting stuck up with some traffic, and that does include the 766 of Bob Christiansen and the DSR Dream Team LMP2 car. As right behind, that was the Pro Sim car, I think, that was just having a massive off-track excursion. That was going through, I think, going into Aintree and then heading down, coming out of Aintree, going onto the Wellington Straight before they landed into Brooklands. And that was very, very lucky for the Pro Sim car there, the 007. They're currently running P9 in the class. Is now, looks like Morten Egerton has just had one LMP2, the 766 up the inside, and the 007 around the outside, going through into Luffield, as now they hurtle their way through past the Teleforingen car, going through into Cops Corner. Oh, that's just like literally, you wait for something to happen, and then you see a GTE, a couple of GT3 cars stuck like piggy in the middle as an LMP2 goes around the outside and up the inside on one particular part of the circuit. This is just what we come to expect here at GTR 24H, don't we?
Well, when you've got more than 30 cars on the grid, or on the track at the moment, it's expected a little bit, but it still takes you by surprise somehow every time that it does indeed happen. Especially when you're driving, it's quite scary at some points. But Egerton is still losing time to Martin Miltai, who's absolutely flying in the GT3 category at the moment. Alexei Mazin lost about 1.3 seconds from that car behind. Well, I was kind of saying that the race for the lead in GT3 was almost over a few moments ago. I've been proved wrong again, because Mazin is starting to lose a little bit of time to Military. I think the Danish Racing League are going to struggle to do much from here, though, because they really are starting to fall away a little bit at the moment. Lost another 6 or 7 tenths to Military on the last particular lap, and so things just not going particularly great for them. But Martin Military tyres really flying in GT3 right now.
Yeah, and I've just had a report from our producer Peter that rain is anticipated to hit at 6:47 p.m. That's in an hour's time here at the circuit. You know what? I'm really the thing is now. It just depends on the severity of it, Ewan. You know, there are some drivers that are really doing rather well, and they're just keeping their noses clean. And it will be a case of going for it and just hoping that you don't come unstuck when the minute the rain comes, because the drivers will then they'll think, okay, who's our fastest driver in the wet? Who's going to really be able to help us profit from these wet weather conditions?
We'll take a quick break right now because we're having a few technical problems with it's back up. Never mind, we won't do that because we've sorted it. So that was fine. We'll stay on a little bit longer before we have to take a next commercial break. But technical problem sorted. It's fine. Anyway, race continuing on, approaching that moment where we're getting 5 hours to go, about 15 minutes away from that or so. Are we about to get an announcement?
Nu kan jeg se. Bum.
Yeah.
Not in a language I understand, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's definitely a language I don't understand what I just heard. But I think realistically, for a lot of the teams, there's been a lot of really good precise driving. There's been a lot of good spatial awareness. There have been some drivers that have not respected the blue flags for other traffic, and that's where the problem lies, because if you keep on making mistakes like that, it's going to cost you in the long run, especially when you're trying to go for a championship push. And in GTE, it's been really good work from both the 53 and the 54 cars. They're both respectively second and first, so it's a 1-2 for GD Musto Esports at the moment. But I'm just trying to keep my eyes on Eros Mascioli in the number 7 Pescara ADG car. And, we look at where they respectively started. Musto GD Esports 54 is still leading the class, having started from pole position. The fifth now listen to this, Ewan. The 53 Musto GD Esports car, right, started 17 places behind in P29, and then behind them was the Pescara ADG car. So to see how both the 50, those two cars have risen to the challenge of trying to get on level pegging. And the good thing is that Liuzzi, Dufoco and Mascioli are all on the same lap thus far. So there's still plenty to play for. I think GTE, we're probably going to get to the last 90 minutes maybe before the end of the race, and then we're going to see that battle really intensify. But, you look at what Cynic in Hypercar's doing, Visno and the team at Varga in LMP2, those battles have really been, I think they've been stopped in their tracks before they even got started with the way that Martin Hemmingson just decided to power past everybody, including Thomas Garcia, just after 45 minutes, starting literally all the way down towards the back of the field. They started in 25th position, so 24 positions gained, and they've now got a 2-lap lead over Omicron Sim Racing with Josef Frederick Suter behind the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all changed really. This race is unrecognisable from where it started. We say that qualifying is not that important, but to be honest, in GTE, that gap that we're seeing is mostly due to the fact that they started so far apart on the grid. It's not just the positions. You do start ever so slightly back in terms of metres. I guess you do have to cover a few more metres throughout the race, but that's not really the point. It's all the of traffic that the guys who started in the back will have had to deal with, that the 54 starting on pole will just not have had to deal with at all. And that's what's making up most of the margin at the moment. I don't think Pescara would have had the pace to quite challenge for the victory again this month, particularly from the way they've shown themselves in the last few moments. They're over a minute off the lead now. It's really between Musto, 54 and 53, depending on who's going to win this race, I think. But apart from that, Pescara, I don't think they've quite had the pace in that new Corvette, although a third place is not bad to say everything that's gone on for them today, and I think they are going to get the championship lead from this either way. They came into the day with 19 points to their name. They are going to add another 16 to that. I think they're going to have 35 by the end of the day. They're going to leapfrog HM Engineering in this one because they're not here. DASSR Lab are behind them, so they're not going to jump up ahead of them, and they're only losing about 3 points to Musto, and given the fact they came in with a 6-point advantage over them, I think Pescara are just about going to take a slender championship lead into Sebring. But this far out, it's not really worth worrying about the championship standings at this particular point because we've just got so many hours of racing to go. 60 to be precise after this race. No more.
Yeah.
72. There you go.
Sorry, whilst you were saying that, I've just been keeping my eyes on the 53 Musto car that's just had a little bit of a door panel rub with the 717 Unison Racing car. Alexei Maizin still behind the wheel of that car. Maizin still leading, so Unison Racing having secure pole position, if memory serves me correctly, in GT3. They started in P16. Mugen Sim Racing, which currently has Martin Milotai, is about a lap, or close to a lap behind. So the Russian crew in the 717 Unison Racing outfit in the Aston Martin doing the brand proud here on home soil. But yeah, I think that was a little bit of rubbings racing, but I don't think there was no harm, there was no foul by Giuseppe De Forco. I think he just maybe Maizin just turned in, realised that he was there and went, oh, well, I need to sort of quickly change direction, as Roland Zooks in the number 95 from DCACers now in the pits once again. And still very much a case of, now the sun is starting, it looks like the sun is starting to fade a little bit here. You can just sort of tell by the for those watching at home, the sort of like the way that the shadows are starting to fall a little bit. It's still looking rather, yeah, you can see coming out onto the national pit straight from, what was it, from Luffield through to Copse. There are some shadows showing from the grandstands going onto the runoff areas on the circuit as the E-Team Brit car, the 68 Orica 07, is currently being piloted once again now by Bradley Brockies, who's taken over from Matt Webb, and currently at the moment in LMP2. E-Team Brit are 8th position at the moment. That will give them points, won't it, on the board if they continue and finish in 8th position, if my memory serves me correctly, Ewan?
Yeah, top 10 get points in each class, that is. It doesn't matter about your overall position at all, you don't need to worry about that at all in terms of totting up the points, but no, it's the complete FIA points system, which I'm not a great fan of the FIA point system, but I am, apart from the gap between first and second, I think it's a little bit too much, but you know, the rest of them absolutely fine, and there's nothing wrong with using it, certainly. I'm sure it's not going to matter too much by the end. It's going to produce as a very close championship that's going to go all the way down to Le Mans, but picking up the points where you can is what these guys are aiming to do, especially those who are not even inside the top 10 at the moment, just trying to get that extra point for completing the race. That could prove crucial towards the end, as silly as it sounds, because it could really be that close towards the end of this championship, and so you do want to get every single point that is possible. We'll be doing the maths after the race, of course, to try and figure out who's going to be in the championship lead at the end of this one. And if we don't get that to you by the end of the broadcast here tonight, then we'll certainly know by the time we head to Sebring the first weekend in March. But yeah, we'll be doing the maths after the stream to try and figure out who is where in terms of the championship. We've already established that if things were to stay as they are, Pescara would probably be leading the championship, and in LMP2, Varga would certainly be leading the championship, having taken the clean sweep of 27 points back in Indianapolis. They could be about to take a clean sweep here in Silverstone as well. I'm pretty sure they did get pole position in this one. In fact, I'm very sure that they did, starting second on the grid because of Driller's penalty in Hypercar, and so it looks like it's going to be a second full 27 points haul for Varga, although it is not over yet in any of these classes.
Yep, so we're about to hit the top of the hour from hour 7 into hour 8 here at the continuing coverage, live and uninterrupted for the Film Vault 12 Hours of Silverstone, and it is the second round of the 2021 GTR 24H Endurance E-Racing World Championship. Leaders coming into the top of the hour at the moment. Pinsim Drillers Esports continues to lead the hypercar class in the number 10 McLaren Senna GTR with Henry Cynic behind the wheel. Daniel Vishner in the number 117 from Varga Sim Racing continues to lead the front. The dominant display by this team once again after a stunning victory at Indianapolis a month ago in LMP2. GTE, it is a 1-2 for the numbers 54 and 53 of Musto GD Esports, with Fabio Liuzzi leading the class ahead of Giuseppe De Forco, and it is an Italian team 1-2-3 courtesy of Pescara ADG in the number 7 Chevrolet Corvette C8R with Eros Masciuli behind the wheel. GT3, it is the number 717 Aston Martin of Alexei Maizin from Unison Racing, who continues to lead the class ahead of the number 41 of Mugen Sim Racing's Martin Milotai, with Morten Egerson in the number 13 Danish Racing League Ferrari G488 GT3. Still 32 cars in their entirety, rounded out by the Teleforingen number 188 with Michael Slott behind the wheel of the 188 Aston Martin GT3 car. And obviously, Ewan, we're getting to within that 45-minute window, or possibly up to an hour, where the rain could fall here at Silverstone.
Yeah, getting closer to that point as the GTE leader comes into the pit lane, number 54, Musto GD Esports, who have led for a very, very long time now. In behind that LMP2 car that's also into the pit lane, that's from Ramada Motorsport, Rui Race, Portuguese driver who's currently in the pit lane, but will be leaving before Liuzzi has to. And so Liuzzi's been in there for quite a while, actually, I'm starting to think at this point, so maybe there's going to be a driver change soon. Although it's an odd hour, isn't it? 7 hours complete. That might not be quite in their schedule. Primavera started the race. Giordano Valeriano was in there second, and now it's Fabio Liuzzi in there. So I just wonder if Liuzzi's going to stay in for maybe one more, or get out to swap for either of his other two drivers. But they've held up really, really well. Going into the day, I thought Liuzzi might struggle a little bit in this company. I thought he didn't quite have the pace of those around him, but he's shown me completely wrong. He's absolutely on the pace here this weekend, doing very, very well for himself and for his team, of course. And so 54 Musto team putting in a fantastic performance as he pulls away from his box right now. Didn't look like the longest stop ever, but it was still time for a driver change. Daniele Primavera gets back into that car, very accomplished Sprint Series driver here at GTR 24H, and started the car here today at the Silverstone 12 Hours. So he's back into that car now and makes his way through turns 3 and 4 to start his stint again.
Yeah, also a change at Ramada Motorsports. Felipe Barreto has now been handed the candle, so to speak, from Rui Reis. So really, we are now at 1900 Central European time here on GTR 24H. I think without further ado, let's go to a commercial break with some words from our sponsors, and we'll be back in just a couple of moments' time.
The 2021 Endurance E-Racing World Championship Round 2, FilmVolt 12 Hours of Silverstone, is brought to you in partnership with ESTV, Leap Gaming, SimLab, Motorvision.tv, Global Flix, Racing for Green, and AMD Ryzen Radeon.